Emerald feathers ruffled as Apollo shifted nervously on his perch, his piercing eyes fixed on the street through the living room window. The African grey parrot had been watching the same black car for quite some time now, something about it triggering an uneasiness in his intelligent mind. Natalie Morrison had always said Apollo was extraordinarily perceptive, more so than any pet she had ever encountered. The elegant townhouse sat on a quiet street in a respectable neighborhood, its large windows allowing abundant natural light to fill the tastefully decorated living room where Apollo's cage stood. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hardwood floors, highlighting the exquisite craftsmanship of the furniture Natalie had so carefully selected. Apollo's head tilted as the car's door opened slightly before closing again. He let out a soft, worried sound. Something wasn't right. Natalie entered the room, a vision of grace even in her casual attire. Her chestnut hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled with intelligence. She noticed Apollo's strange behavior immediately. "What's wrong, Apollo?" she asked, approaching his cage. "You're awfully quiet today." Apollo bobbed his head frantically, his gaze never leaving the window. Natalie followed his line of sight, but saw nothing unusual, just the neighboring houses, a few parked cars, and the occasional passerby enjoying the pleasant weather. "Silly bird," she said affectionately, reaching for the remote control. "Let's watch some of that nature program you like." As the television came to life, Apollo became increasingly agitated. He paced back and forth on his perch, occasionally spreading his wings as if ready to take flight. It wasn't like him to be so distressed. "Apollo, settle down," Natalie said firmly, concerned by his unusual behavior. Just then the doorbell rang. Natalie glanced at the clock on the wall, not expecting any visitors. She smoothed her blouse and made her way to the door, wary but curious. On her doorstep stood a tall, distinguished-looking man with salt-and-pepper hair and piercing blue eyes. He wore an impeccably tailored suit and offered a charming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mrs. Morrison?" he inquired, his voice deep and smooth. "Ms.," Natalie corrected automatically. "Can I help you?" "Oliver King," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "I apologize for dropping by unannounced, but I'm with First Heritage Insurance. We're conducting a neighborhood survey about home security, and I was hoping to ask you a few questions." Natalie hesitated. There was something vaguely familiar about the man, but she couldn't place him. Behind her, Apollo let out a sharp screech. "This isn't a good time," she said, beginning to close the door. "Perhaps you could leave your card." Oliver's hand shot out, preventing the door from closing. His smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say, Natalie," he said, his tone no longer friendly. "It concerns your brother." The mention of her brother made Natalie freeze. Jacob had disappeared months ago, leaving behind a bewildered family and a trail of unanswered questions. The police investigation had gone nowhere. "What about Jacob?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "May I come in?" Oliver asked, the facade of politeness returning. Against her better judgment, Natalie stepped aside. As Oliver entered her home, Apollo became frantic, screeching and flapping his wings violently. "Interesting bird," Oliver commented, eyeing Apollo with mild curiosity. "African grey, isn't he? Quite intelligent." "He usually doesn't react this way to strangers," Natalie explained, growing increasingly uneasy. "Please, what do you know about Jacob?" Oliver moved to the center of the living room, his gaze sweeping over the space as if assessing its value. "Your brother made some unfortunate choices before he disappeared. He came into possession of something that doesn't belong to him, something valuable." "I don't understand," Natalie said, her confusion genuine. "Jacob is an accountant. He doesn't steal." "Not steal," Oliver corrected smoothly. "Let's say he discovered information he shouldn't have, information that could be damaging to certain individuals." As the conversation continued, Apollo's distress intensified. He repeatedly called out, "Watch out! Watch out!" a phrase Natalie had taught him long ago for when he spotted the neighbor's cat approaching birds in the garden. Oliver's eyes narrowed as he glanced at the parrot. "Noisy bird, isn't he?" "Apollo is sensitive to mood," Natalie said defensively. "Look, Mr. King, if that's even your real name, I haven't heard from Jacob in months. Whatever you think he took, I don't have it. Oliver studied her face intently, looking for signs of deception. Finding none, he sighed. I believe you, Natalie, but unfortunately the people I work for are less trusting. They think Jacob may have hidden this information somewhere in your home. Your employers? Natalie took a step back, realizing the danger she might be in. Who exactly do you work for? That's not important, Oliver replied dismissively. What matters is finding what Jacob took. Once we have it, all of this unpleasantness can end. Your brother can come home safely. The implication hung in the air. Jacob wasn't missing, he was being held. You have Jacob, Natalie whispered, her heart racing. Let's just say I know where he is, Oliver said carefully, and his continued well-being depends on your cooperation. Apollo suddenly called out, Phone, phone, another phrase Natalie had taught him. Oliver's hand moved to his jacket pocket, and Natalie caught a glimpse of something metallic. A wave of cold fear washed over her. Whatever this man wanted, he was dangerous. I need to check on dinner, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Would you excuse me for a moment? Oliver nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. Don't do anything foolish, Natalie, for Jacob's sake. Natalie walked toward the kitchen, her mind racing. As soon as she was out of Oliver's sight, she grabbed her cell phone from the counter and quickly texted her friend, Detective Daniel Reeves. Stranger in my house, claiming to know about Jacob. Threatening. Send help. She slipped the phone into her pocket and returned to the living room where Oliver was examining the framed photographs on her mantelpiece. Lovely family, he commented, picking up a picture of Natalie, Jacob, and their parents from happier times. It would be a shame if anything happened to them. I don't know what Jacob found, Natalie said, her voice stronger now, but I want proof that he's alive before I help you. Oliver considered this request, then reached for his phone. Fair enough. While he was distracted, Apollo flew from his open cage. Natalie often left it unlocked when she was home and landed on a bookshelf near the window, still watching the street intently. Oliver made a call, speaking briefly to someone before passing the phone to Natalie. You have 30 seconds. Jacob. Natalie's voice trembled. Nat. Her brother's voice was weak but unmistakable. Don't give them anything. It's not worth... The call cut off abruptly. Natalie looked up at Oliver, tears in her eyes. What have you done to him? Nothing compared to what will happen if you don't cooperate, Oliver replied coldly. Now, think carefully. Did Jacob hide anything here? Files, USB drives, anything unusual? Before Natalie could answer, Apollo let out a series of urgent calls from his perch by the window. Car! Car! Get out! Get out! Oliver strode to the window, peering out cautiously. A police cruiser had pulled up across the street. You called the police? He hissed, his composed demeanor cracking. I didn't, Natalie insisted, though silently blessing Apollo's warning about her phone. They patrol this neighborhood regularly. Oliver's expression darkened as he watched the officers exit their vehicle. He turned to Natalie, his eyes cold with fury. This isn't over. You have one day to find what your brother took. I'll be in touch with instructions. He moved swiftly to the back of the house, disappearing through the kitchen and out the back door, just as a knock came at the front. Apollo flew back to Natalie's shoulder, nuzzling against her hair as if to comfort her. When she opened the door, Detective Daniel Reeves stood there, concern evident on his handsome face. Natalie? Are you all right? I got your text and was nearby. Natalie nearly collapsed with relief. Daniel, thank goodness, a man was just here. He says he has Jacob. Daniel's expression turned serious as he entered the house, one hand resting cautiously on his holstered weapon. After confirming the intruder was gone, he turned his attention back to Natalie. Tell me everything, he urged, leading her to the sofa. As Natalie recounted her encounter with Oliver, Apollo remained vigilant, his attention divided between her and the window. Daniel listened intently, occasionally making notes on a small pad. So this man claims Jacob took something valuable, information that could damage people, Daniel summarized. And he thinks Jacob might have hidden it here? Natalie nodded, still shaken. But I have no idea what it could be. Jacob never mentioned anything like that. Daniel frowned thoughtfully. When was the last time you saw him? Did he give you anything to keep for him? Something that seemed unusual? No, nothing like that, Natalie said, then paused. Wait. He did ask me to look after a box of old books and papers. Said he was clearing out his apartment and needed somewhere to store them until he found a bigger place. Where are these boxes now? In the spare room closet. But Daniel, it's just old college textbooks and files. I looked through them when he dropped them off. Apollo suddenly flew from Natalie's shoulder to the hallway, calling out insistently. Natalie and Daniel exchanged glances before following the parrot to the spare bedroom. He's trying to tell us something, Natalie said, watching as Apollo perched on the closet doorknob. He's been acting strange all day. Daniel smiled slightly. Smart bird. Let's see what's in those boxes. They pulled out several cardboard boxes filled with exactly what Natalie had described. Old textbooks, notebooks, and files from Jacob's college days. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Are you sure this is everything he gave you? Daniel asked, leafing through a calculus textbook. Yes, Natalie confirmed, then hesitated. Well, except for the bird. The bird? Daniel looked up sharply. Apollo. Jacob asked me to look after him about a week before he disappeared. Said his apartment building suddenly changed their pet policy. Natalie stroked Apollo's head gently. I've always loved birds, so I was happy to take him. Daniel's eyes widened with sudden understanding. Natalie, does Apollo have a special carrying case? Yes, it's in my bedroom closet. Jacob insisted I keep it. Said Apollo was used to it and might need it for vet visits. They hurried to Natalie's bedroom, Apollo flying ahead as if leading the way. The carrying case was a high-quality model with reinforced sides and comfortable padding. Daniel examined it carefully, running his fingers along the seams. There's something off about the weight, he murmured, turning it upside down. With skilled fingers, he located and pressed on a hidden seam in the case's bottom panel. A false bottom popped open, revealing a slim USB drive and a small notebook. Natalie gasped. I had no idea that was there. Daniel carefully removed the items. This could be what they're looking for. We need to get you somewhere safe while we examine these. As if on cue, Apollo let out another warning call. Car, bad man. They rushed to the window to see the black car from earlier slowly driving past the house. Daniel pulled Natalie away from the window. Pack a bag quickly. You and Apollo are coming with me. While Natalie gathered essentials, Daniel made several calls arranging for officers to watch the house and beginning the process of tracing the call Oliver had made to Jacob. When Natalie returned with a small suitcase and Apollo's travel cage, a different one than the case with the hidden compartment, Daniel was studying the notebook they'd found. It's encrypted, he explained, showing her pages filled with seemingly random numbers and letters, but there's a note on the first page addressed to you. Natalie took the notebook with trembling hands and read the message scrawled in her brother's familiar handwriting. Nat, if you're reading this, I'm in trouble. The evidence is on the drive, financial records that prove everything. Trust no one, especially at Pinnacle Investments. Apollo knows more than you think. Remember our childhood code. Use it. Love, J. Natalie looked up at Daniel, confusion and fear warring on her face. Our childhood code, I don't understand. We'll figure it out, Daniel assured her, gently taking the notebook and drive and securing them in an evidence bag. Right now, we need to get you to safety. As they prepared to leave, Apollo became agitated again, fluttering to the kitchen window and calling out urgently. Daniel approached cautiously, peering out into the gathering darkness. A figure was moving stealthily through the backyard. We need to go. Now, Daniel said, drawing his weapon. Is there another way out? The side door through the garage, Natalie whispered, gathering Apollo into his travel cage despite his protests. They moved silently through the house, Daniel leading the way with his weapon ready. Just as they reached the garage, they heard the sound of breaking glass from the kitchen. Run, Daniel urged, unlocking his car with his free hand. Get in and stay down. Natalie slipped into the passenger seat, clutching Apollo's cage on her lap as Daniel started the engine. The garage door seemed to open agonizingly slowly, but finally they were pulling out onto the street, accelerating away from the danger behind them. In the rearview mirror, Daniel could see figures emerging from Natalie's house, one of them speaking urgently into a phone. He made a series of quick turns, ensuring they weren't being followed before heading toward the police station. "We'll keep you in protective custody until we sort this out," he told Natalie, "and find Jacob." Natalie nodded, still shaken. Apollo had grown quiet in his cage, watching the passing lights of the city with intelligent eyes. Whatever secrets Jacob had uncovered, whatever danger they now faced, one thing was clear. Apollo was somehow key to understanding it all. As they drove through the night, Natalie found herself whispering a silent thank you to the extraordinary bird who had saved her life with his warnings. Somehow, she knew this was just the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous puzzle, one where a parrot might hold the answers they desperately needed. The safe house was a modest apartment in an unremarkable building on the outskirts of the city. Detective Daniel had insisted on complete secrecy, telling only his most trusted colleague, Officer Maria Torres, about their location. The blinds remained drawn, and Apollo's cage was positioned away from the windows, a precaution that the parrot seemed to understand, remaining unusually quiet. Natalie sat at the small dining table, surrounded by copies of Jacob's notebook pages, while Daniel worked on decrypting the USB drive. "Anything yet?" she asked, rubbing her tired eyes. Daniel shook his head. "The encryption is sophisticated. We'll need help from our tech team, but I'm hesitant to bring too many people into this until we know who we can trust." Natalie nodded, returning her attention to the notebook. "Jacob mentioned our childhood code. We used to write secret messages to each other when we were young." "What kind of code?" Daniel asked, interest piqued. "It was simple. We'd replace letters with numbers based on their position in the alphabet. A was 1, B was 2, and so on, but we'd add our birth months to confuse anyone trying to crack it." Natalie smiled faintly at the memory. "Jacob was born in April, the 4th month, so he'd add 4 to each number. I was born in November, the 11th month, so I'd add 11. Daniel moved closer, examining the notebook over her shoulder. Could that be what these number sequences are? Natalie studied the first line of numbers with renewed focus. "Let me try." As she worked on decoding the message, Apollo suddenly perked up, tilting his head as if listening intently. He hopped across his cage and began tapping his beak against the bars in a distinct pattern. "What's he doing?" Daniel asked. "I'm not sure," Natalie replied, watching the parrot's behavior with curiosity. "He seems to be trying to tell us something." Apollo continued his rhythmic tapping, then suddenly spoke. "Bookcase, red book, money talks." Natalie and Daniel exchanged startled glances. "That's not one of his usual phrases," Natalie said. "Jacob must have taught him that." "Money talks," Daniel repeated thoughtfully. "Could be referring to financial records, evidence of corruption or embezzlement." "The red book." Natalie's eyes widened with sudden understanding. Jacob had a red accounting ledger he always kept with him. He called it his money talks book because he said numbers always tell the truth. Apollo bobbed his head excitedly, as if confirming her insight. 4357, the parrot suddenly recited, clearly enunciating each number. "A code," Daniel suggested, quickly writing down the numbers. Natalie frowned. "Maybe, but it doesn't match our childhood cipher." "Could be a password," Daniel said, "or a safe combination." Before they could speculate further, Daniel's phone vibrated. He answered it cautiously, listening for a moment before his expression turned grave. "That was Officer Torres," he said after ending the call. "Someone broke into the evidence room at the station. They were specifically targeting the items we brought in from your house." "Did they get anything?" Natalie asked, fear evident in her voice. "No, we stored the drive and notebook in a different location as a precaution, but this confirms my suspicion. Someone in the department is working with Oliver." Apollo suddenly became agitated, flapping his wings and calling out, "Watchman! Watchman!" "What does that mean?" Daniel asked, immediately on alert. "I don't know. It's not something I taught him." Natalie moved to the window, carefully peering through a gap in the blinds. The street below appeared normal, with no sign of surveillance. "We need to move," Daniel decided, already gathering their materials. If they compromised the station, this location might not be secure either. As they packed, Apollo continued his strange behavior, repeating phrases that seemed disconnected yet urgent. Red Book, 4357, Watchman Pinnacle. He then added a new phrase, filing cabinet, third drawer. Jacob's office, Natalie realized. He had a filing cabinet with 3 drawers. The bottom drawer had a false panel. We used to hide birthday presents for our parents there when we were young. Could he have hidden the Red Book there? Daniel asked, already moving toward the door. It's possible, but his office would be at Pinnacle Investments, the company he warned me not to trust. Daniel considered this complication. We'll need a plan to get in without alerting anyone. Apollo's next words seemed almost prophetic. Morning cleaning, 6 o'clock, badge. Natalie stared at the parrot in amazement. How does he know these things? Jacob must have discussed it around him, Daniel explained. Parrots don't just mimic sounds, they can associate phrases with contexts. Apollo might be repeating conversations he overheard. The cleaning crew, Natalie said, the pieces falling into place. Jacob always went in early to avoid distractions. He would have seen the cleaning staff regularly. Daniel checked his watch. It's just past midnight. We have a few hours to prepare if we want to get in at 6. They loaded their belongings and Apollo into Daniel's unmarked car, taking a circuitous route to ensure they weren't followed. Daniel made a call to Officer Torres, arranging for fake cleaning staff credentials and appropriate uniforms. As they drove, Natalie continued working on the notebook, applying their childhood code. Slowly, fragments of a message emerged. Words like offshore, laundering, and executives that painted a disturbing picture. I think Jacob uncovered a money laundering operation, she told Daniel, something big enough that people are willing to kill to keep it hidden. By dawn, their plan was set. Officer Torres met them at a diner several blocks from Pinnacle Investments, providing the uniforms and badges they would need. She also brought news from the forensic team's initial analysis of the USB drive. They've only accessed a small portion of the data, she explained quietly, but what they found confirms Natalie's theory. There are records of suspicious transactions, millions of dollars moving through shell companies. Any names? Daniel asked. One keeps appearing, Vincent Blackwood. The name hit Natalie like a physical blow. Blackwood is the CEO of Pinnacle. He's been a family friend for years. He helped Jacob get his job there. Daniel's expression hardened. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who betray us. As they prepared to enter Pinnacle's imposing glass tower, Natalie felt a strange calm settle over her. Apollo, now hidden in a special compartment in her cleaning cart, had grown quiet, as if sensing the importance of their mission. The security guard barely glanced at their credentials, waving them through with disinterested efficiency. Within minutes, they were in the elevator heading to the executive floor where Jacob's office was located. Remember, Daniel murmured, we stick to the plan. Find the Red Book and get out, no heroics. The executive floor was deserted, the early morning silence broken only by the hum of air conditioning. Jacob's office was modest compared to the lavish rooms belonging to senior executives, but it offered something crucial, privacy. Daniel stood watch at the door, while Natalie went straight to the filing cabinet. The bottom drawer opened smoothly, revealing neatly organized folders. Working quickly, she felt along the back panel until she found the hidden catch. The false panel slid open, revealing a small compartment. Empty. It's not here, she whispered, disappointment washing over her. Apollo suddenly rustled in his hiding place, letting out a quiet but insistent call. Picture frame. Family picture. Natalie's eyes went to the desk, where a photograph of their family stood in a simple frame. She picked it up, turning it over to examine the back. The cardboard backing came away easily, revealing a small red notebook hidden inside. Found it, she breathed, quickly securing the book and replacing the photograph. Just as they were about to leave, voices in the corridor froze them in place. One was immediately recognizable, the smooth, cultured tones of Vincent Blackwood himself. Must be dealt with immediately, he was saying. If the authorities get hold of Jacob's evidence, they won't, interrupted another voice, Oliver's. We're closing in on his sister. It's only a matter of time. Natalie and Daniel exchanged alarmed glances. There was no way out except past the approaching men. Daniel gestured toward a supply closet, and they quickly ducked inside, pulling their cleaning cart with them. Through the thin door, they could hear Blackwood and Oliver enter Jacob's office. "Search everything again," Blackwood commanded. "The red book has to be here somewhere." "And if it isn't," Oliver asked, "then we move to Plan B. Bring the sister in. Use whatever force necessary. Jacob will talk if he believes she's in danger." The sound of drawers being opened and papers shuffled filled the tense silence. Natalie clutched the red book to her chest, hardly daring to breathe. Beside her, Daniel had drawn his weapon, ready to defend them if discovered. Suddenly, a phone rang. "What?" Blackwood barked into the receiver. His tone changed immediately. "Yes, sir. Of course. We'll be right there." After he hung up, they heard him say to Oliver, "The senator is getting nervous. We need to meet him now." "What about the search?" Oliver asked. "It will have to wait. This takes priority." Their footsteps receded down the corridor, and the elevator doors opened and closed. Daniel waited a full minute before cautiously opening the closet door. "We need to leave now," he whispered. As they made their way back to the elevator, Apollo suddenly let out a warning. "Camera, camera!" Daniel looked up to see a security camera swiveling in their direction. "They'll know we were here," he said grimly. "Then we need to get this to the right people immediately," Natalie replied, indicating the red book. They shed their cleaning uniforms as soon as they reached Daniel's car, quickly changing back into their regular clothes. As Daniel drove away from Pinnacle Tower, Natalie began examining the red book. Inside were detailed records of transactions, each meticulously documented in Jacob's precise handwriting. But what stood out were the names: prominent business leaders, politicians, even law enforcement officials, all connected to the same money laundering scheme. This is why they're so desperate, Natalie realized. Jacob didn't just uncover corruption at Pinnacle. He found a network that extends to the highest levels. "Including Senator Warren," Daniel added, recalling Blackwood's phone conversation. "We can't take this to the regular channels, not when we don't know who's compromised." A name near the end of the book caught Natalie's attention, making her blood run cold. "Daniel, your chief is on this list." Daniel's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. That explains how they knew about the evidence room. After a moment's thought, he made a decision. "There's only one person I trust completely, Federal Agent Eliza Chen. She's been investigating white-collar crime for years." As they drove to meet Agent Chen at a secure location, Apollo began a new series of calls, more agitated than before. "Black car. Black car. Get out." Daniel checked the rearview mirror and spotted a black sedan gaining on them rapidly. "We've got company," he warned, accelerating through a yellow light. The chase that followed was tense but brief. Daniel's extensive training as a detective gave him an edge, allowing him to lose their pursuer through a series of quick turns and a brief detour through a shopping center parking lot. When they finally reached the meeting point, a quiet cafe in a busy shopping district, Agent Chen was waiting. The elegant, no-nonsense federal agent listened intently as they explained the situation, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. "This matches patterns we've been tracking for months," she confirmed after examining the red book. "But we never had enough evidence to move on the major players. This could break the case wide open." "What about Jacob?" Natalie asked, the worry for her brother never far from her thoughts. "If they're holding him as leverage, he's likely still alive," Agent Chen reasoned. "Now that we have the evidence, we can use it to negotiate." Apollo, who had been unusually quiet during their meeting, suddenly spoke up with perfect clarity. "Warehouse, river, blue door." All three humans turned to stare at the parrot. Jacob must have taken him there, Natalie realized, or talked about it enough times that Apollo memorized it. Agent Chen was already pulling up maps on her tablet. "There's an industrial area along the river with several warehouses. Most are abandoned now." "Can you get satellite imagery?" Daniel asked. Within minutes, they were looking at aerial photos of the warehouse district. One building stood out, larger than the others, with a distinctive blue door visible even from above. "That has to be it," Natalie said, hope rising in her chest. Agent Chen made several calls, mobilizing a team while keeping the operation strictly off official channels. "We move at dusk," she decided. "Small team, full deniability until we confirm Jacob is there." As the day wore on, Natalie found herself talking quietly to Apollo, drawing comfort from his intelligent eyes. and occasional gentle nuzzling. "We're going to find him," she promised the parrot. "And when we do, you'll have done more to save him than anyone could have imagined." Apollo bobbed his head, as if in understanding, then offered one more cryptic phrase. "Trust green light. Wait for green light." None of them knew what it meant, but Natalie committed it to memory. So far, every one of Apollo's mysterious utterances had proven significant. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they prepared for the mission that would either bring Jacob home or confirm their worst fears. Whatever awaited them at the warehouse with the blue door, one thing was certain. A parrot's remarkable memory had given them their best chance at solving this dangerous puzzle. And perhaps when it was all over, Apollo would have one more phrase to add to his vocabulary. Case closed. Twilight shrouded the abandoned warehouse district in hazy purple shadows. Agent Chen's tactical team, consisting of 5 trusted federal agents she'd personally vetted, moved silently toward the building with the blue door. Natalie remained in the surveillance van with Apollo, while Daniel insisted on joining the operation despite Chen's reservations. "Remember, we don't know how many hostiles are inside," Chen warned over the secure comm channel. "Primary objective is locating and extracting Jacob Morrison. Evidence collection is secondary." Natalie watched the thermal imaging screens, heart pounding as the team approached the warehouse. Apollo perched quietly on her shoulder, his presence oddly comforting in the tension-filled moment. "Team in position," came the whispered update. "No external guards visible. Proceeding to entry points." The agents split into 2 groups, covering both the main entrance and a side door discovered during their earlier reconnaissance. Minutes stretched like hours as Natalie watched the heat signatures of Chen's team prepare to breach. Suddenly, Apollo became agitated. "Green light! Wait for green light!" he squawked, flapping his wings in distress. "Hold position," Natalie said urgently into her headset. "Apollo's trying to tell us something." Chen's voice crackled through the speaker. "We don't have time to—" "Trust me," Natalie interrupted. "Every warning he's given has been accurate." Almost as if in response to her faith, a light on the warehouse's roof began to pulse, a green signal beacon used for aircraft warnings, illuminating in a rhythmic pattern. "It's an alarm system," Daniel realized. "If we breach while it's active, we'll trigger it." They watched in silence as the green light continued its steady pulse. Then, at precisely 9 o'clock, it stopped. "Now!" Apollo called. "Go now!" "The light's deactivated," Natalie confirmed, watching the thermal images. "It must be on a timer." Chen gave the signal and both teams moved simultaneously, entering the warehouse with practiced efficiency. Through their body cameras, Natalie could see the interior, vast, shadowy, filled with abandoned machinery and stacked crates. "First floor clear," came the update. "Moving to the offices in the back." Apollo shuffled nervously on Natalie's shoulder, his feathers brushing against her cheek. "Downstairs," he said suddenly. "Jacob downstairs." "Check for a basement level," Natalie relayed immediately. The thermal imaging had limitations through the concrete floors, but one of Chen's agents discovered a hidden stairwell behind a false wall in what had once been the foreman's office. The team descended cautiously, weapons ready. What they found below made Natalie's blood run cold. The basement had been converted into a makeshift prison, 3 cells with steel bars, each containing a simple cot and bucket. In the farthest cell lay a figure, motionless on the thin mattress. "Jacob!" Natalie gasped, recognizing her brother despite his gaunt appearance. As the agents moved to free him, a door at the far end of the basement corridor burst open. Oliver entered with 2 armed men, their weapons already raised. "Federal agents! Drop your weapons!" Chen shouted, her team taking defensive positions. Instead of complying, Oliver smiled coldly. "I'd reconsider that order if I were you, Agent Chen, unless you want this entire building to come down." He held up a detonator, his thumb hovering over the trigger. "Simple insurance policy. Now, everyone put your weapons down, or we all go up in flames." A tense standoff ensued. Chen's agents maintained their aim while evaluating the threat. Oliver's men kept their weapons trained on Jacob's still form. In the surveillance van, Natalie watched in horror. "We have to do something," she whispered to Apollo. who was unusually still, his eyes fixed on the screens. Then, without warning, the parrot launched himself from her shoulder, flying toward the van's door. Before Natalie could stop him, he had somehow managed to unlatch it and was soaring into the night. "Apollo!" she called, but the bird was already disappearing toward the warehouse. Inside the building, the standoff continued. "You're surrounded," Chen was saying. "There's no way out of this." "I've always found there's a way out for those willing to be ruthless enough," Oliver replied smoothly. "Now the ledger and the USB drive, or I press this button." No one noticed the small grey shape that fluttered through an open window high in the warehouse wall. Apollo circled once in the shadows of the rafters, taking in the scene below, before diving with remarkable precision. His target was not Oliver, but the detonator in his hand. Sharp talons and a powerful beak struck simultaneously, causing Oliver to cry out in surprise and pain. The detonator clattered to the floor as Apollo shot upward again, screeching triumphantly. The distraction was all Chen's team needed. They moved swiftly, disarming and subduing Oliver and his men before they could recover. Within moments, the situation was under control. Jacob, awakened by the commotion, stared in disbelief at the parrot now perched on a pipe overhead. "Apollo?" he croaked, his voice weak from disuse. Natalie, who had rushed from the van despite orders to stay put, ran to her brother's side as the agents unlocked his cell. "Jacob, are you okay?" "I'll live," he managed, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You found my messages in the Red Book?" "We found everything," she assured him. "Apollo helped us. He remembered all your clues." Jacob's gaze moved to the parrot, who had now flown down to perch on the cell door. "I knew he would. That's why I taught him those phrases." He reached out a trembling hand to stroke Apollo's feathers. "Good bird. The best bird." As medics attended to Jacob, Agent Chen supervised the arrest of Oliver and his associates. "We'll need your full statement once you're stabilized," she told Jacob, "but the evidence you collected is already enough to start bringing down Blackwood's network." "There's more," Jacob said weakly, hidden in Apollo's cage. "The backing of his food dish contains a micro SD card with video evidence. Meetings, transactions, everything. I was Blackwood's accountant, but I was also gathering evidence for months before they caught me." Daniel, who had been helping secure the scene, approached with news. "We've got a team moving on Blackwood now, and Senator Warren's security detail has been replaced with federal agents. Neither of them is getting away." As they helped Jacob to the ambulance waiting outside, Apollo flew ahead, circling twice before landing on the roof of the vehicle. It was as if he was ensuring the path was clear, still protecting the humans he had come to see as his flock. The following days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Jacob's recovery began under federal protection, while the evidence he had gathered, along with Apollo's crucial clues, led to the arrest of Vincent Blackwood, Senator Warren, and 14 other conspirators involved in the money laundering scheme. Police Chief Richardson, whose name had appeared in the Red Book, was taken into custody while attempting to flee the country. His involvement explained how Oliver had known about their movements and the evidence room breach. A week after the warehouse rescue, Natalie sat in a comfortable hospital room, watching Jacob sleep peacefully. Apollo dozed on a special perch the nurses had allowed, his feathers gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Daniel entered quietly, carrying coffee for Natalie and a small bag of Apollo's favorite treats. "How is he?" he asked, nodding toward Jacob. "Better every day," Natalie replied with a genuine smile. "The doctor says he can leave next week." Daniel sat beside her, their shoulders touching comfortably. Over the past weeks, their relationship had deepened beyond professional collaboration, finding solid ground in mutual respect and shared experiences. "Agent Chen called," he said. "Blackwood's talking, trying to cut a deal. His testimony will implicate financial criminals in 3 different countries." "Will it be enough to put them all away?" "More than enough." Between Jacob's documentation, the video evidence and financial records from the USB drive, this case is airtight. Daniel reached over to gently stroke Apollo's head. "All thanks to this remarkable little guy." The parrot opened one eye, regarding Daniel with what almost looked like smugness before settling back to his nap. "He saved all of us," Natalie agreed softly. Jacob stirred, his eyes opening slowly. He looked much better now. Some color had returned to his face and the haunted look in his eyes had begun to fade. "Hey there," Natalie said, taking his hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but the truck is getting smaller every day," Jacob replied with a hint of his old humor. He glanced at Apollo. "Has he been showing off his vocabulary?" "Not as much lately," Natalie said. "I think maybe he doesn't need to anymore. All those phrases were meant to help us find you." "Not all of them," Jacob said with a mysterious smile. "Apollo, what happens next?" The parrot immediately perked up, fluffing his feathers importantly, before speaking in a perfect imitation of Jacob's voice. "New start, family together, be happy." Tears sprang to Natalie's eyes as she looked questioningly at her brother. "That was my promise to myself during the worst days," Jacob explained. "I kept repeating it when I thought I might not make it, a reminder of what I was fighting for." 3 months later, that promise had become reality. Jacob had recovered fully and had accepted a position with the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI, where his expertise would help prevent others from experiencing what he had endured. Natalie and Daniel's relationship had blossomed into something neither had expected, but both treasured deeply. Their shared ordeal had created a bond that only grew stronger with time. As for Apollo, he had become something of a celebrity. After his crucial role in breaking the case made the news, with many details classified, of course, he had been officially recognized by the FBI with a special commendation, the first ever awarded to a parrot. On a bright spring morning, Natalie stood in the garden of her new home, watching Apollo explore the spacious outdoor aviary Daniel had built. The parrot moved from perch to perch, occasionally calling out greetings to the neighborhood birds. Jacob joined her, looking healthy and relaxed in casual clothes, a far cry from the corporate suits he'd once worn daily. "He seems to be enjoying retirement from detective work," he commented, nodding toward Apollo. "I don't know if he's fully retired," Natalie laughed. "He still announces every car that pulls into the driveway and keeps a close eye on the neighbors." "Once a witness, always a witness," Jacob said with a smile. Daniel emerged from the house carrying a tray with coffee and pastries. "Breakfast is served," he announced, setting it on the garden table, "and I've got news from Chen." They sat together as Daniel shared the latest developments. The international investigation sparked by Jacob's evidence had expanded, uncovering similar operations in multiple countries. Blackwood's testimony had proved invaluable, and assets worth billions were being seized and returned to legitimate purposes. "They're calling it the biggest financial crimes bust in history," Daniel concluded. "All because a parrot remembered what he heard," Jacob said, watching Apollo preen his feathers in the sunshine. As if sensing he was the topic of conversation, Apollo flew to the table, landing gracefully beside Jacob's plate and eyeing the pastries with interest. "Don't even think about it," Natalie warned affectionately. "You've got your own breakfast." Apollo tilted his head, regarding her with one bright, intelligent eye before speaking in his clearest voice. "Family safe now. All good." The simple phrase brought smiles to all their faces. It wasn't one Jacob had taught him, or one he'd picked up during the investigation. It was something new, Apollo's own assessment of their current situation. "Yes," Natalie agreed, reaching out to stroke his feathers gently. "Family safe now. All good." Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Natalie sat alone with Apollo in the garden. Daniel had gone to pick up dinner, and Jacob was inside on a call with Agent Chen about his upcoming testimony. "You know," she said conversationally to the parrot, "I never properly thanked you for saving us all." Apollo bobbed his head, as if acknowledging her words. "I don't know if you understand how important you were, how your memory and intelligence changed everything, but I want you to know that you're the most extraordinary bird in the world." Apollo preened modestly, before hopping closer and gently nuzzling her hand. Then, with perfect timing, he spoke one final phrase, one she had never heard before. "Love you too." Natalie's heart filled with emotion as she realized the depth of connection they had formed through their shared ordeal. This wasn't just a pet repeating words. This was a friend who had stood by them through the darkest times, who had used every ability at his disposal to protect his human family. As Daniel's car pulled into the driveway and Jacob emerged from the house to join them, Natalie watched Apollo fly to his favorite perch in the aviary, a spot that offered a perfect view of the entire garden and the street beyond. Ever watchful, ever alert, but now observing a scene of peace and safety rather than danger. The unlikely hero, a witness with wings, had found his happy ending, surrounded by the family he had helped save. And though he might never fully comprehend the magnitude of what he had accomplished, in his own way, Apollo understood what mattered most. They were together, they were safe, and all was indeed good. As evening settled over the garden, Apollo's contented trilling joined the chorus of natural sounds, a peaceful soundtrack to their new beginning. The parrot, who had once been burdened with dangerous secrets, now sang freely, his remarkable memory no longer needed for evidence but cherished as part of the extraordinary bond they all shared. Some witnesses changed the course of a single case, but Apollo had changed lives, and in doing so had found his true home. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.